Super Mario Maker 2 has now finally landed on Nintendo Switch, and it has answered a lot of prayers for fans of the original game. There's slopes, there's rising water and lava, there's more control over the camera, vertical levels, and just so many more things for you to play with when you're creating. On the whole, it is a great sequel, and part of that is because there's now multiplayer, both in co-op form and in versus. But it's confusing as anything to get to, and now with the game out in the wild for the past week, there are some rather fundamental problems that have become very, very clear to me. A lot of what I'm talking about here is to do with the multiplayer versus, but it could also apply to multiplayer co-op in some cases as well. So here's 7 things I want to see Nintendo do to fix or add to Super Mario Maker 2's multiplayer. Number 1, good god, just sort out the insane lag. Lag is by far away the number 1 issue that I have with Super Mario Maker 2 online. There's roughly a 1 in 3 chance in my experience that the level will load in and you're just left with this horrendous stutter as the game plays in fits and starts. But that's not the end of it, because other times there are just a few smaller stutters. That's not so bad, you might think, but even just the occasional lag spike will send you to your doom if you can't judge a jump properly and you're battling a level that requires a good deal of precision. So yeah, just the netcode in general, the host selection, the matchmaking, all of this does really need to be improved by Nintendo as soon as possible. Number 2, let people finish. Multiplayer versus in Super Mario Maker 2 is all about the winner. Get to the end, touch the flagpole or cross the finish line and bask in the glory of the words "you win" popping up on the screen. But unlike, for example, Mario Kart multiplayer, there's barely any time given for the other players to cross the same finish line and come in second or third or even just fourth. It varies depending on the theme as well, so sometimes it's done and dusted in an instant and other times there's a few moments where you can manage to get there. But just adding a simple 10 seconds at the end of a level would really help players that are in a close but not quite close enough situation to get second or third and get some of that satisfaction of actually managing to complete the level. Number 3, reward more than just the winner. That black and white win-loss feeling also comes as the game hands out ranking points between the rounds. Win and you typically get somewhere between 100 and 150 points, and what determines this isn't exactly clear. But lose and you drop a handful of points from your tally, and this plays into the ranking system where you can go up and down between ranks. This is usually around 10 to 20 points, and again, what determines this isn't really that clear. All of this means that the game can feel a little bit, well, unrewarding if you don't manage to get a win for a long time. If Nintendo reconsider and do add a little bit of time for players to finish at the end of a level, then they can also start to award proper positions for second, third and fourth, and they can also give players a few points for coming second if they manage to cross the finish line, for example. Number 4, make better use of level tagging to select the maps. Now that we've cleared some of the fairly big picture stuff, let's get into the nitty gritty. Level creators can happily assign a multiplayer versus tag, but what's the point of doing this and even creating a versus level if these aren't then prioritized for, people playing multiplayer versus? I'm not saying that they should be all that you ever see in this mode, because there's plenty of fun to be had in racing through a standard level, but using the multiplayer versus tag signifies that someone has put in the time and effort into creating something specially for versus. My own level creation, Goomba Arena, is based on an arena style battle for 4 players, and I don't see that kind of thing often enough in versus. And no, I'm not going to apologise for that shameless plug of my own level. Oddly enough, I also feel that I've seen just as many versus tagged maps as I have music tagged maps, and these should absolutely categorically not be put in front of players playing multiplayer versus or co-op. They've been designed purely with a single player's path through a level in mind. So where exactly is the competitive edge when you've been boxed together by slowly moving blocks and only the lead player can possibly win because they can't be passed through collisions? Obviously they can filter out the music tags, but better than this, let players tag their levels as being specifically not suitable for versus. Number 5, allow level completion requirements to be per player. Having different level completion requirements in the game is absolutely great because it means you can do so many more different things with your level design. But in versus, they are a weird mishmash of individual and universal. If the requirement is to defeat a boss, for example, then whoever lands the final blow gets the finishing flag above their head and has to try to race to the end while the others are trying to nick it off them by bouncing off their heads. It can be quite fun in this particular situation, but this is one very specific use case and it does not encompass what every designer is going to try and cook up. It is exactly the same for collectathons, where the person that grabs the final gold or red coin can then finish the level. But if the creator has made something that's a bit more maze-like, filling the level with pipes and warp doors, this can then lead to players just goal hanging, waiting for others to do all of the work and then try to steal it from them at the end. There should be capacity to make it so that additional players can complete the objective for themselves, so that if the coin target is 30 and there's a possible 120 coins to find, a second completion flag could pop up for a player who reaches 50 or 60 coins, for example. For red coins then, it could be purely individual, so that each player has to go and collect all 5 or 3 or 4 coins for themselves, and then decide whether or not a flag can be stolen. Number 6. Ghost races or optional collision detection. Without a good way to test levels for multiplayer outside of grabbing some friends locally, there can sometimes be levels that, just don't really work that well when there's more than one person. Helping make more levels more suitable for versus would be ghost mode, where you can only see the ghosts of your opponents in a separate instance of the level, while you have your own blocks, your own enemies, and so on to deal with. It would be a much more pure, less madcap take on versus, granted, but for levels that are otherwise not suited to 4 players, it would be a great way to make them viable. And number 7, add some level selection to multiplayer. A lot of multiplayer games out there have map selection between rounds, and while that can lead to Nuketown getting picked 7 times in a row for COD, that won't happen in Super Mario Maker 2, where there is such a wide pool of user-created levels to choose from. This would add a little bit more time between rounds, I'll give you that, and the game is already pretty wasteful with time as it goes through matchmaking between every single round, but it would let players themselves weed out some of the times where music levels crop up, or let you perhaps vote for an easier platforming level if that's what they're really after. So those are my personal 7 ideas for how Nintendo can improve or fix the multiplayer in Super Mario Maker 2, but I'm sure that there are plenty of other ideas out there. If you've watched all the way through to this point, feel free to shout out in the comments as to what you would want to change in the game. But again, I have to say that through all of these problems, I'm having an absolute blast with multiplayer versus, and sure, I can complain when levels aren't designed for multiplayer or when the lag kicks in, but it is still actually my go-to mode for Super Mario Maker 2's course world. This game is absolutely still worth picking up and playing, even if you don't even touch the multiplayer. Anyway, that's all I've got for this video. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, and perhaps it gets you thinking a little bit if you decide to go and make a multiplayer level yourself. Before you go, the obligatory request for you to like and subscribe and even share this video with others, and hopefully we will see you again soon. Goodbye!